The Galactic Exodus, the emergency beacon cut through space like a knife through silence. On Earth, in the newly built Galactic Communications Center in Geneva, Commander Elena Vasquez stared at the holographic message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. The words glowed in harsh red letters translated into every human language simultaneously. Immediate evacuation required. The Devourers approach. All species must abandon Sector 7 Alpha within 72 standard hours. Compliance is mandatory for survival. Elena ran her hand through her dark hair, a habit she had developed during her 20 years in the military. She had been chosen to lead Earth's first Galactic Defense Coordination Office just 6 months ago, when humanity had finally been invited to join the galactic community. Now she faced the first major crisis of her career. Dr. Marcus Chen burst through the office doors without knocking. The slim xenobiologist had been studying alien species since first contact, and his face was pale with concern. "Elena, have you seen the council message? We need to talk immediately." "I just received it," Elena replied, gesturing to the hologram. "Marcus, what exactly are these Devourers? The galactic databases we have access to barely mention them." Marcus activated his tablet, displaying a collection of fragmented reports. "That's because every species that encounters them either dies or runs. From what I can piece together, they're an ancient force that consumes entire worlds. Not just the resources, Elena. They consume everything. The planet itself." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" "The records are incomplete, but at least 47 star systems in the past 3 centuries, maybe more." Marcus paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Elena, no species has ever successfully fought them. The standard protocol is immediate evacuation." Before Elena could respond, her communication system activated. The face of Ambassador Kethvar, Earth's primary liaison with the Galactic Council, appeared on the screen. The reptilian diplomat's scales had shifted to a pale yellow color that Elena had learned indicated extreme stress. "Commander Vasquez," Kethvar said, his voice tight with urgency, "I assume you have received the evacuation order. My ship is already en route to Earth to begin emergency evacuations. We can save perhaps 10% of your population if we begin immediately." Elena exchanged glances with Marcus. 10% out of 8 billion people, Ambassador, Elena said carefully. "What about the other 90%? Kethavar's large eyes blinked slowly. "Commander, you must understand. The Devourers have never been defeated. Never. In galactic history, no species has successfully resisted them. Those who try simply cease to exist." "But surely someone has tried to fight back," Marcus interjected. "Some species must have attempted to defend their homeworlds." "If they did, there are no records of it," Kethavar replied grimly. "The Devourers leave nothing behind. No survivors, no witnesses, no trace that a civilization ever existed." Elena stood up and walked to the large window overlooking Lake Geneva. Outside, people went about their daily lives, unaware that their world had just been sentenced to destruction. Children played in the park. Couples walked hand in hand along the waterfront. Scientists worked in laboratories, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. "How long do we have?" she asked without turning around. "The Devourer fleet will reach your solar system in approximately 48 Earth days," Kethavar said. "The evacuation ships can only make 2 trips in that time." Elena turned back to face the screen. "Ambassador, please convey this message to the Galactic Council. Earth declines the evacuation order." The silence that followed was deafening. Kethavar's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a deep orange that Elena had never seen before. "Commander," Kethavar said slowly, "I do not think the translation matrix is functioning correctly. Did you say Earth declines?" "You heard correctly," Elena replied firmly. "We decline to abandon our world." Marcus stared at her in shock. "Elena, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that humanity doesn't run." Elena's voice grew stronger with each word. "We've faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars that nearly destroyed us. But we're still here because humans don't give up. Kethavar's head tilted in confusion. Commander, perhaps you do not understand the magnitude of this threat. The Devourers are not a natural disaster or a military force you can negotiate with. They are an unstoppable cosmic phenomenon. Then they haven't met humans yet, Elena said with a slight smile. Within hours of Elena's declaration, the news spread across Earth like wildfire. The world's leaders held emergency sessions. Scientists gathered in think tanks. Military commanders reviewed impossible scenarios. But something remarkable happened that surprised even Elena herself. Humanity united. Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum physicist at MIT, was the first to propose the impossible. What if we don't run? She asked during a hastily arranged global scientific conference. What if we study them instead? Study them? Scoffed Dr. James Harrison from Oxford. Sarah, these entities have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. Exactly, Sarah replied, pulling up holographic models, which means everyone who faced them used advanced technology. But what if advanced isn't always better? What if they have a weakness that only a primitive species like us would think to exploit? In São Paulo, engineer Roberto Santos was already sketching designs for weapons that didn't exist yet. His team had been working on theoretical applications of Earth's magnetic field as a defensive system. It was considered impossible by most scientists, but Roberto had built his career on achieving the impossible. Captain Sofia Reyes stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, humanity's first deep space battleship. It had been designed for exploration and peaceful contact with alien species. Now it would be humanity's first line of defense against an enemy that had never known defeat. Captain, her communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. High Counselor Veltara wants to speak with Earth's leadership directly. Sophia nodded. Put it through to Geneva. Commander Vasquez should hear this. Back in Geneva, Elena found herself face to face with High Counselor Veltara, a being of pure energy whose thoughts manifested as shimmering colors in the air around her translucent form. Commander Vasquez. Veltara's voice resonated, like distant thunder. The Council has reviewed Earth's response to the evacuation order. We must inform you that this decision is unprecedented in galactic history. I imagine it is, Elena replied calmly. You do not understand, Veltara continued, her energy form flickering with what seemed like frustration. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species has ever chosen to face the Devourers. The concept of resistance against them is so foreign that we lack words for it in most galactic languages. Dr. Marcus Chen, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. High Counselor, may I ask what you know about human history? Veltara's form shimmered. Your species is young, barely spacefaring. Your technology is primitive compared to most galactic civilizations. And yet, Marcus said with a slight smile, we're the first species to say no to the Devourers. Because you do not comprehend what you face. Veltara's form flared brighter. The Devourers are not merely destructive. They are entropy itself given form. They are the end of all things made manifest. Elena stepped closer to the hologram. High Counselor, with respect, that sounds like something someone says when they've already given up. The energy being fell, silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Commander, I have witnessed the destruction of 7 worlds in my lifetime. Each time we arrived to offer evacuation. Each time species gratefully accepted our help. Each time we saved who we could and mourned what we lost. And each time, Elena said gently, you reinforced the idea that the Devourers were unstoppable. Because they are. Veltara's form flared again. Are they? Marcus interjected. Or is that just what everyone believes because no one has ever tried to prove otherwise? As word of humanity's decision spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. For the first time in galactic history, evacuation ships began to slow down. Some even turned around. Ambassador Kethvar contacted Elena again, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species appeared on the communication screen, all wanting to understand why humanity was choosing what they saw as certain death. "Commander," Kethvar said, his scales now a curious shade of green, "the galaxy is confused by your species' response. Some are calling it madness, others are calling it something else." "What are they calling it?" Elena asked. A new voice spoke up, belonging to a crystalline being from the Andorian system. "Hope, Commander. They are calling it Hope." Elena felt something stir in her chest. For the first time since receiving the evacuation order, she truly believed they might have a chance. "High Counselor Veltara has called an emergency session of the Galactic Council," Kethvar continued. "They want to understand your species better before they witness your extinction." "They're welcome to watch," Elena replied, "but I don't think they're going to see what they expect." As the communication ended, Elena turned to Marcus. 47 days, she said quietly. 47 days, Marcus agreed. "Think it's enough time to prove that humans are too stubborn to die?" Elena smiled, the first genuine smile she had managed since this all began. "Marcus, we're about to find out just how dangerous hope can be." Across the galaxy, ancient eyes turned toward a small blue world that had just done something impossible. The Devourers had consumed civilizations for eons following the same pattern: arrive, terrify, consume, move on. But now, for the first time in their existence, they faced something they had never encountered before: prey that refused to run. The Human Gambit. 47 days later, the edge of the solar system erupted in darkness. Admiral Jiang Wei stood on the command deck of the ESS Terra Nova, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Through the reinforced viewport, he watched as space itself seemed to tear open, revealing something that defied every law of physics he knew. The Devourer fleet didn't arrive like normal ships. They materialized like living nightmares, their hulls absorbing light itself, creating holes in the starfield. Each ship was massive beyond comprehension, some stretching for hundreds of kilometers, their surfaces writhing with organic-looking textures that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, her voice tight with controlled fear. "We're reading over 300 contacts. The largest vessels are—" "Sir, they're the size of small moons." Zhang nodded grimly. In the past 47 days, humanity had built the largest fleet in their history. 150 ships representing the combined might of every nation on Earth. Against the Devourer fleet, they looked like children's toys. "Communications, get me Commander Vasquez," Zhang ordered. Elena's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the command center in Geneva. Behind her, the most brilliant minds humanity had ever assembled worked frantically at their stations. "Admiral, we're tracking the Devourer fleet," she said without preamble. "Dr. Kim, report." Dr. Sarah Kim stepped into view, her face exhausted but determined. For 47 days she had worked without rest, studying every scrap of data the Galactic Council had reluctantly shared about the Devourers. "Admiral, we found it," Sarah said. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. "The Devourers have a weakness, but it's not what anyone expected." On countless ships throughout the galaxy, representatives from hundreds of species watched the human fleet face impossible odds. High Counselor Veltara observed from her flagship. Her energy formed dim with what could only be described as grief. "They cannot know what they face," she murmured to her aide. "The Devourers have consumed worlds with 1,000,000 times their firepower. But on Earth, in a laboratory buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, engineer Roberto Santos was putting the finishing touches on humanity's secret weapon. It wasn't a gun or a missile or an energy beam. It was something far more dangerous. It was an idea." "Dr. Kim," Admiral Jiang said over the communication link, "explain it to me one more time. How do we fight something that's never been defeated?" Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing the quantum analysis of Devourer technology. "Admiral, every species that faced the Devourers tried to match their power with superior technology. Bigger guns, stronger shields, faster ships, but that's not how they can be beaten. She manipulated the display, highlighting specific energy patterns. The Devourers are essentially living quantum computers. They process reality itself, consuming matter and energy by rewriting the fundamental forces that hold atoms together. They're not just destroying worlds, they're editing them out of existence. That sounds even more impossible to fight, Zhang said grimly. Unless, Dr. Marcus Chen interjected, stepping into view, you approach the problem like a virus instead of like a weapon. Zhang frowned. Explain. The Devourers are perfect quantum computers, Marcus continued. But perfect systems have perfect vulnerabilities. They can't process paradoxes, contradictions, or logical impossibilities. Their minds are designed to consume and understand everything they encounter. Sarah nodded excitedly. But what happens when a perfect logical system encounters something perfectly illogical? Zhang was beginning to understand. It crashes. It does more than crash, Elena said, her voice filled with quiet intensity. It burns out trying to process what can't be processed. Across the solar system, Captain Yuki Tanaka sat in the cockpit of her experimental fighter craft. Unlike every other ship in the human fleet, her vessel wasn't designed for battle. It was designed for something far more dangerous than destruction. It was designed for impossible survival. The Devourer fleet reached Jupiter's orbit and paused. For the first time in eons, they encountered organized resistance. The human fleet had formed a defensive line between Jupiter and Mars, their weapons powered and ready. The largest Devourer ship, a nightmare construct the size of a small asteroid, pulsed with dark energy. From within its depths, something ancient awakened. The Devourer Prime, the original consciousness that had spawned this plague across the galaxy, focused its attention on the tiny ships that dared stand in its path. What is this? The thought rippled across space in frequencies that made human minds ache. Insects that will not flee? Admiral Zhang felt the alien presence pressing against his thoughts and fought to maintain focus. All ships, this is it. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to confuse them. The human fleet opened fire, but not with conventional weapons. Every ship launched what appeared to be simple probes, small devices that raced toward the Devourer fleet at incredible speed. The Devourers barely noticed them. Their point defense systems could have destroyed the probes easily, but why waste energy on something so pathetically small? The probes struck the Devourer ships and did nothing. Nothing except activate Roberto Santos's masterpiece. Each probe began broadcasting a signal, a quantum frequency that shouldn't have been possible. It was a paradox made manifest, a logical impossibility encoded in pure mathematics. The signal told the Devourer's quantum minds a simple story. This probe exists and does not exist. It is here and not here. It is real and imaginary. It is true and false. Process this, understand this, consume this. The Devourer Prime felt the signal hit its perfect consciousness like acid. For the first time in its existence, it encountered something it could not comprehend, could not categorize, could not consume. What? What is this thing? Now! Elena shouted from Earth. Captain Yuki Tanaka activated her ship's special system. Unlike the probes, her fighter wasn't broadcasting a paradox. It was becoming one. Roberto's most brilliant innovation wasn't a weapon at all. It was a quantum state generator that allowed Yuki's ship to exist in multiple contradictory states, simultaneously. To the Devourer's perfect senses, her ship was simultaneously destroyed and intact, present and absent, attacking and retreating. The Devourer Prime's consciousness recoiled in something approaching pain. Across its fleet, ships began to falter as their quantum processors overloaded, trying to understand the impossible data they were receiving. This cannot be. This is not possible. Things must be one thing or another. They cannot be both. But humans had never been very good at following rules about what was possible. Dr. Sarah Kim watched the quantum readings from Earth and felt her heart race. It's working. Their processing systems are entering cascade failure. The largest devourer ships began to list as their perfect systems crashed, trying desperately to comprehend paradoxes that had no solution. Smaller vessels simply stopped moving, their controlling intelligences locked in infinite loops of impossible logic. The Devourer Prime, ancient beyond measure, felt something it had never experienced before: doubt. How can imperfect beings create perfect impossibilities? Elena watched the tactical display and realized that humanity had just achieved something that would echo across galactic history. They hadn't defeated the Devourers through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had defeated them through the most human trait of all: the refusal to accept that something was impossible. But the battle wasn't over. The Devourer Prime, wounded but not destroyed, began to adapt. Its perfect mind, for the first time in eons, began to learn something new. It began to understand that perfection itself might be a flaw. If impossibility can exist, it thought, then perhaps I can be imperfect too. The ancient consciousness began to change, allowing contradictions into its thoughts, embracing the illogical. Slowly, painfully, it began to process the paradoxes. Zhang watched his tactical display with growing concern. Dr. Kim, the large ship is adapting. It's learning to handle the paradoxes. Then we give it something else to think about, Elena said with a smile that would have terrified the Devourers if they could have seen it. Across the human fleet, every ship began broadcasting a new signal. Not a paradox this time, but something equally dangerous to a perfect mind: creativity. The signal contained every work of human art, every piece of music, every story, every joke, every poem ever created. It was chaos and beauty and contradiction and wonder all mixed together in a glorious, impossible symphony of human experience. The Devourer Prime's newly flexible consciousness was hit by the full force of human creativity and staggered. It had learned to process paradoxes, but it had no defense against imagination. What are these patterns? They serve no logical purpose. They solve no problems. They accomplish nothing. And yet they are beautiful. For the first time in its existence, the Devourer Prime experienced wonder. The change rippled through the entire fleet. Ships that had consumed worlds for eons suddenly found themselves contemplating the beauty of a human lullaby. Minds that had known only hunger began to understand the concept of art for art's sake. High Counselor Veltara watched from her observation ship in stunned silence as the impossible happened before her energy-form eyes. The Devourer fleet, the unstoppable force that had terrified the galaxy for millennia, was transforming. "Commander Vasquez," she transmitted urgently, "what have you done?" Elena's response was broadcast to every ship in the system, human and alien alike. "We taught them that perfection is overrated." The Devourer Prime, its consciousness now fundamentally changed, sent a message that reached every mind in the solar system. When it spoke, its voice no longer carried the cold certainty of perfect logic. Instead, it carried something that sounded almost like curiosity. "We came to consume. We came to end. But you have shown us something we never knew existed. You have shown us possibility." The ancient entity paused, its massive ship drifting closer to the human fleet. "We would learn from you, small creatures who make impossible things possible. We would understand this thing you call hope." Admiral Zhang looked at his tactical display and realized that humanity had just accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They hadn't just defeated the Devourers, they had redeemed them. Elena's voice carried across the communication channels to every listening ear in the galaxy. "The galaxy told us that some things were impossible. They told us that some enemies couldn't be defeated. They told us that hope was foolish." She paused, looking out at the stars where human ships flew alongside former world killers. They were wrong. Humans don't just refuse to run from the impossible. We make friends with it. And in that moment, as ancient enemies became curious allies, the galaxy learned something new about the small blue world that had changed everything. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting monsters, but from teaching them how to dream.